Hi, so this is really the last video I'm going to be doing for the class. I decided to make two separate ones just because I wanted the first one to be more about some strategies and my views and the things I thought about things we've learned. And then this one I think is more trying to incorporate my beliefs that have been changed throughout the course and what things have really made a mark on the way I think about things. I also want to talk about specifically trying to use things from this course to help students with disability in my future classroom. So yeah, first I'll talk about my coming into the class. I was a little bit skeptical about inclusion. I said about in my other video, I didn't really know very much of anything about the process that was even happening in schools. For all I knew, it could have been the way it was when I was in high school. I've heard of inclusion, and I've also, my sister's a teacher, I've heard her talking about her classes being inclusive, but we never got into much depth, so I was pretty naive when beginning the class. And I was also a bit skeptic. I read the intro and then chapter 1, where it talks about, it sort of generalizes and I think even a little bit romanticizes the concept of inclusion, and so I'm always a bit of a skeptic. Maybe it's the English person in me, but it just all seemed, they all made it inclusion sort of like the end-all be-all, like too good to be true type of thing, and it's just this revolutionary idea that's gonna fix all of our problems, which of course I know that there's lots of struggles, and even in an inclusive environment, which I do believe now to be better than other methods that were had. I think I would just, even in the first chapter, my thinking began to start changing a little. I came in completely like not knowing anything at all, and even not knowing anything at all, I made some judgments that perhaps inclusion may not be the best strategy. The classroom seemed to be working fine in my high school when they had students in the class for part of the day and they had pull-out classrooms. I almost thought individualized instruction may be more helpful or in a pull-out classroom, because then people can focus on whatever they need to focus on, and it would maybe be more individualized than in an inclusive classroom. So I came in thinking like that, and it makes me like sort of like I think I was just sort of speculating it throughout when I was like thinking about that in that way. I think that's something at the very beginning that made me start to sort of orientate myself with the kind of thoughts that are behind these different methods. It's on page 23. It's this figure 1.2. This had a big effect on me just from the beginning, because it talks about sort of the philosophy behind the traditional model and then the inclusive educational model. And when you read that, I think it really hits you just exactly what the different models say about how you feel about students with disabilities learning in a general education classroom. And there are some, reading the traditional model started making me mad, and it started making me mad at myself that I didn't realize a lot of what this is sort of saying. If you're using some of the traditional models, what you're implying by them. And so reading this figure started that, and it made me open to really thinking about how monumental inclusion is. Another thing that really helped me to solidify my support for inclusion was the observation I did with my sister. It was a class where the majority of the students actually had disabilities, and I saw different ways she modified her lesson that were really really interesting, and it inspired me to see, like, if she can do it, so can I. Like, I think sometimes I get nervous that it's going to be too overwhelming, or I have a real guilty conscience if I feel like I'm going to fail somebody, if I feel like I'm going to fail a student, or I can't live up to what they need, and that has a real weight of responsibility. And I think that before the observation, I was just so nervous, but then I realized during the observation process that you have to do the best you can. You have to do what you think is right, and sometimes you learn things in baby steps, and that's okay. It's okay to have some trial and error, and it's okay to try out different things to see what is working and what is not. I think that my fear of that has also sort of changed. I think I'm more willing to look and see what's out there that I can use to try and change the environment of the classroom. I also learned she did some types of things with them to get them to all pay attention that really helped to get them to focus and hone in on the lesson. And I didn't see her she didn't use a lot of differentiating methods in the observation, but you could tell that they were talking about an upcoming project. I wasn't there for the directions, but they had different types of projects for different groups of people based on what they needed to work on. And so you could tell it was an element in the classroom. It wasn't something that I got to see a whole ton of, but it made me realize that every day is going to be different. Some days you're going to have to differentiate things more than others. Some days you're going to be able to do whole class instruction. It just depends. So that was also something I learned from the observation that sort of changed my way of thinking. So in order to talk about, so I think that the biggest thing in thinking about how you are going to change your learning environment to make it an inclusive environment is, one, to start with your philosophy. How do you see an inclusive environment? What are your main ideas behind it? Like, some that resonate with me, I'm going to this chart because, like I said, that's something that affected me. All students fit in the general education classroom. It's not, oh, they were put here and now this is the way it is. It's looking at it and saying, no, this is the way it should be. This is how school should be. And I also like students and teachers learn from one another and solve problems together. In general, I believe in a constructivist style classroom. I believe that you have to take what students bring to the table, what the teacher brings to the table, and we construct knowledge and meaning together, and we work together. That is how I will run my classroom, with that pedagogy in mind. And I also think that I'm also going to have it in mind with this new idea of that inclusion is the right thing. It's not something that was put on to teachers and now it's a responsibility they have. It's something that should have always been like that in my mind. So I think that just having these mindsets going into the classroom is really imperative, so you're not always, maybe, I think before how I felt was maybe I would be resenting that sometimes students with disabilities wouldn't be in a pull-out classroom. I know that's really honest, and I'm trying to be as honest as I can about it. I think that before, when I looked at it, I definitely was so scared of what all the responsibilities that you'd have that I would almost resent having that inclusive nature of a classroom. But after going through this class, I really think that it is important to see that the school system is set up to be successful for all students, to help all students, to have them learn, and that is what it is, and that's by becoming teachers, that is something that we obliged to believe, and I do believe that. So that is something I'm definitely going to start my classroom with, that idea. So maybe I can try and make lessons more inherently, give them more inherent flexibility. That was something that I also connected with too. I also think that one of the most imperative things that we talked about in this class was differentiated instruction methods. I'm going to go, I wrote some notes on that. Yeah, but I think that there was a ton of resources in the text to help you start thinking about ways you could differentiate instruction. I think that is imperative to be thinking about, even off the bat, even before you're designing your units, designing your lessons, to think about ways that you could be doing it differently. It was interesting to learn about adaptations, modifications, accommodations, and the differences between them, and what they sort of mean, and how they have a relation. Those three things have a relationship to the least intrusive mentality, that you are going to do things as least intrusive as possible. I also liked, I think I already talked about they had all the boxes with the ideas of ways you could be differentiating things. And I also like that they categorize it. The text does, into material differentiation, into instructional, like the different ways you can go about it. Like I said, I'm consulting the text because my memory is terrible, and sometimes I think that's why this is so good, is because you can always consult it and always go back and say, in what ways do I need to make this more accessible to people. I definitely think that in terms of differentiating, I'll be using a lot of different learning strategies, and one idea that I thought of was to do ability grouping with learning strategies, and perhaps to have classes where we split the class up into groups, and then different groups learn different strategies based upon what they need the most. I've seen that done before, and I think that that's a really, really good idea, because that way you're still helping everybody in an area that they need. But there was a statistic in the book that said, I can't remember the exact statistic, but a certain amount of people in the class already know what you're telling them and already have knowledge of it. So a lot of times you're just rehashing information. I think this is a way to avoid that rehashing of information and not teaching students things they might already know or don't need to be learning. I think that this is a good way to think about it. And also, I thought of differentiating. I know now that Gardner's is not a real evidence-based thing, but I still think that people have strengths and weaknesses in their learning preferences. I think that sometimes they can be helped through using methods that they connect to more of, and so playing off student interest. I think that we can use differentiated methods to cater to what students want to be doing, want to be making, want to be learning. Right now I found the quote that I was looking for. When teachers teach something to an entire classroom at the same time, a third already knew it, a third will get it, a third won't. So for 2/3 of children, it was wasted time. That was a powerful quote to me. I never heard that before. So that was something that was really important. Um, but yeah, it's hard to know exactly what types of adaptations and modifications I'm going to be using. Since I haven't started teaching, I could speculate, but I think that's why this class has been so good, because it gives you, it gave a whole array of things that you might be using, might need. Not that you necessarily will need, but things to go back to when you are teaching and realize that something could be done better. So I definitely think that this class has helped me to realize that if I realize something is not going as well as it could be, or I'm failing some students and they really need some help in different areas, I have a ton of ideas to go back to and really help me try and differentiate their experience, so so everybody can learn. I think it's hard because I was just talking about sort of my philosophical beliefs, and I really want to match up my instruction to what I believe, which I really think is a lot easier said than done. I've had teachers who say they believe certain things and then they don't teach with those in mind, and it makes me realize that I don't want to be a teacher like that. Whatever I believe, I really want to be able to showcase that in the classroom. And I know beliefs will change, like mine have changed over this class, just learning about, even skimming the surface of inclusion and IEPs and all these processes, or all these models. I know I've just skimmed the surface, but even that has left a mark on me. But I really want to be a teacher who teaches to what they do believe, and I think that that this class has helped me to see how, in what ways that is possible, and what things that I can do to show that my beliefs are apparent in my classroom. So yeah, so that's just a little bit about stuff that I've learned in this class, and like I said, I know it was just an overview because I talked real specific in my some of my other class videos. But yeah, if you have any other questions or anything you want to ask me, just let me know. It's been fun.